You've heard about ESG, but do you know how to get started with ESG in your own business and, more importantly, transform ESG into a strategic advantage for your business? This is Krista Gun, and welcome back to another episode of Womenpreneur Asia, the podcast that celebrates Asian women entrepreneurs across Asia and tells the real stories behind their journeys. As always, this episode is sponsored by Reebok Studio. Today, I'm speaking with Malaysian entrepreneur Yvonne Yong, founder of Stratx Advisory and a strategist who helps small and medium enterprises weave sustainability into their growth story. In this episode, Yvonne breaks down ESG as a strategic toolkit, not a checkbox, and shows how small and mid-sized enterprises can start with 4 practical steps. Frame ESG as a competitive advantage and unlock new markets, better pricing, and a stronger stakeholder trust. If you're a woman entrepreneur in Asia looking to make your business more resilient and future-ready, this episode is for you. Let's dive into how to turn environmental and social awareness into real business value. Hi Yvonne, welcome to Womenpreneur Asia.
Hi Krista, thank you, and it's a pleasure being here. Yeah, thank you for having me today.
So Yvonne, before we get started, can you give a little bit of a background how you got into the business that you are in today?
I'm an ESG and strategy advisor. So what I do is that I provide business consulting, coaching, training in these 2 areas, basically helping SMEs harmonize their business purpose, people, planet, and profit as part of strategy and also for sustainability. So I was pretty lucky. I started about 20 years ago because when I started my career with a management consulting firm, one of the big 4, I specialized in strategy and sustainability. And during that time, we are one of the pioneers of sustainability practices. So most of our clients are basically GLCs, Cs, and then early public listed companies. And at that time, it was positioned differently. It's called the CR, Corporate Responsibility. So that's where I started my journey. And then in my whole career, I've mainly been working with MNC. And then at such a point, I think my last job was a EXCO member. I was head of strategy for a insurance company. And during that time, my boss asked me about talent development. And if you're a talent, they'll ask you, what's your next step, what you're planning. And it really got me thinking. And I felt that the next thing I wanted to do was becoming a rainmaker. But my work has always been more of in-between role as head of strategy because the one who's implementing the teams. And I'm not so much associated to marketing and sales. So that time I started to explore a bit more and I invested in some small businesses. Long story short is that during the COVID period, I started to be a bit more involved in some of these businesses to figure out how they will survive. And during that time, I took a lot of courses, whether it was entrepreneur courses or marketing and sales courses. And then from there, eventually I decided to leave my job, and I thought it was just for a while. This whole exploration became like really empowering, and eventually I went into business coaching. And then in the last 3 years, I noticed that actually at the time I was doing business coaching and then some consulting. And this time I realized that businesses are starting to talk about ESG and the market is starting to shift. So what I see is that there's an opportunity for me to pivot what I'm doing and relate it stronger to sustainability. And so that's how I got back into this space and start offering all training, coaching and consulting in sustainability alongside my strategy practice.
So I would like to circle back to what you said. You mentioned just now that I thought it will be for a while. What happened? Did you think of it as a temporary phase or you went back into some other role, or was it something that you just wanted to explore?
Yeah, at the time I thought it was a short while. In the end of the day, it was not what I have been doing, and I was doing pretty well in this whole career ladder and so on. So I thought that I might go back. Things just took a different turn and I just went deeper. And I think more importantly is I also found my mission in this moving forward about what I would like to do with my life. Because my life motto used to be doing my best and then give my best. Right? Then eventually it came to a point where doing my best at that time was fulfilling a lot of responsibilities to my family and so on. Then it came to a point I felt that I got that level of stability. So I would like to do something that I felt was important to me. And my mission now is to help entrepreneurs sustain and fulfill their purpose and together we make this world a better place, because in the end, if you could change what entrepreneurs do, then you have the ability to make a big impact for everyone. And I also felt that climate change, on top of many other environmental and social issues, is a real threat. And it's actually a shared humanity in that sense and a collective responsibility. Just take a guess. When they talk about climate change, right, nowadays, most of the time, when we say we race towards net zero, what we're trying to do really is how can we avoid the world temperature to increase by 1.5 Celsius compared to pre-industrial times. And take a guess, how long more does it take for us to achieve that? What do you think?
100 years?
Yeah. So sometimes we may think it's so long. Actually, there's a bunch of research scientists and experts in this area, and they came out and then they have this website. Okay, their research and so on is published in this website. So there's actually this world climate clock, and it does a countdown. And today I went and checked that countdown, and that countdown is actually 3 years, 122 days, and about 10 hours or so now. A lot of people have this interpretation that climate change is a next generation problem. We are doing this for our children, but actually they didn't realize that it's affecting us now. And what will happen? A lot of people didn't realize what will happen if we actually hit this threshold of 1.5 Celsius. And once we hit that, we are trying to avoid it becoming 2. That's why a lot of people start to talk about, a lot of companies, you may have heard about net zero. Right? So what they're trying to do is that can we cancel off all the emissions that we create with absorbing it back, so that in the end the outcome is net zero, right? And maintain ourselves at wherever we are and slowly reduce if possible, so that we do not exceed 1.5 by too much, because based on the current trajectory, it looks like we will be getting there. And what will happen? 70 to 90% of the coral reef will die off, right? And there will be a lot of extreme heat cases. So things that you experience today, it will be 2 times more. And there's a lot of infrastructure and things that is built around today's weather, like in Malaysia as well. A lot of things is the roads and so on is built for today's temperature. But when the temperature changes, it's not just about temperature change. There will be a lot of things that will happen, including storms that you've not heard about, hurricanes, things that, will appear in our life that we have not expected. And so with that, our buildings and so on may not be able to sustain those climate changes. And of course, you may have heard of many of the cities like Maldives and so on that may be going underwater. In fact, many states of Malaysia may also start to be underwater. So I think with that, I feel that it's a strong need to bring the word out there for business to realize that they are one of the key catalysts to help us prevent this from happening. Because in the end of the day, if there's no earth, right, then there's no business, right, or livelihood. And what is the most alarming thing? The most alarming thing is that in 2024, the World Meteorological Department or Meteorology Department, they have said that we actually achieved the 1.5 Celsius already compared to pre-industrial time. But I believe that it could be not consistently. Yeah. But I think moving forward, once we have achieved this temperature consistently, then all the stuff that I talk about will slowly happen, affect us very badly. So as one of the saying, I don't know if you heard this saying, the greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will be the one who will save it, right? So I feel that actually we have to start to take leadership in this, and everyone will make a difference. So I decided that this is the path that I want to go with. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So I was a bit pessimistic. I said 100 years, right? So apparently it's within 4 years. Consider like within the 4 years is okay. So I guess, maybe I'm also thinking, maybe the next generation that will be the ones to be able to really find a better planet, or make sure the planet is getting better and we're slowly healing it. So when you talk about ESG, you mentioned just now that in the past it's called CR. So is ESG bigger than CR?
I think it's a very good question. I think this brings us back to why we are doing all of this. And I think it's better to talk about the bigger concept, whether it was CR and then eventually at one point it was CSR, then CR. It's like an evolution on this kind of terminologies, because it could be, as we move towards ESG, a lot of financial institutions or governing bodies around financial institutions are actually pushing this agenda, which is important, because only when you look into the money or the people behind the money or control the money, and that's where things will move, especially for businesses as well. I think it's important for us to take a step back and understand first what is sustainability, and then how does now ESG relate back to sustainability, right? One of the most popular definition of sustainability is how can we have development that meets the needs of current needs without compromising the needs of future generation to meet their needs. Basically, it's often described as revolving around three key pillars: people, planet, and profit. So meaning that if you do not, for business level, right, if you do not have enough profit, you're not economically viable or sustainable, then you won't sustain, right? So the second thing is, if people are not supporting your business, like government want to shut you down, Greenpeace is like lobbying at you, and then your reputation is hit, or your customers don't support you anymore, or your staff, you have high turnover and nobody wants to work with you. So it definitely affects your business sustainability. That's the people side. And then the planet side is resources, because all businesses uses resources. So if the viability of the environment or the resources that you currently use is not the same anymore, it will either increase costs, it will make it not available anymore, or it's difficult to be available, and it may not be sustainable for your business. So in the end of the day, sustainability is to me, the main idea about what we're doing. And how does ESG come into play? ESG basically is a framework to measure non-financial performance. So if you think about it this way, when we measure our financial performance, then we have our financial statements, right? And then those will follow some accounting standards. So ESG is a framework to measure non-financial impacts, and it's a standard for that. But of course, these two terminologies are used a bit differently and sometimes even interchangeably in some contexts by certain standards or certain bodies. Well, you know that it's very closely related.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people they throw around the terms, right? But a lot of people have probably very little understanding of what those terms actually mean, or they just think that one is just a progression of the other. This is just like a better version of that, or like an add-on or something that's on top of that. So I'm glad you clarified that. So let's talk about some myths then. We talked about what your mission is. Your mission is to make sure that at least we have a planet to live on. We don't run out of the planet, or the planet won't combust. So what are some of the myths that you have heard in your line of business that you like to say, no, those are really not true, and here's how you can think about it?
Earlier on, we busted one of the myths, right? A lot of people think it's a long time to come, but actually you're not wrong as well, in the sense that maybe where it will really affect us to a sense where we can't live in this planet anymore, if it continues, it might take a longer time. The 3 years time zone is more about the 1.5 Celsius. Okay, but apart from that, I think maybe I will bring up 3 top myths, right? That a lot of businesses often, I hear them raising it when we are having conversation. The first one is, a lot of businesses think that sustainability or ESG is a lot about environment and charity, doing good for environment and doing something good for charity, right? But in fact, actually, it's like I mentioned, it's just a framework to measure our impact and our risk. How are we positively or negatively affecting environment or people or social or our key stakeholders, and at the same time how we also are being impacted by them, and how should we prepare ourselves to be more sustainable as a company because of the interrelations between either we impact or environmental situation impacting us as things changes. So I think managing well will lead to business sustainability, but a lot of people feel that it's about doing good. So today when something comes up, then they will say, okay, yeah, I should use some of my profit to support this cause, support that cause. But because if someone choose to do that, they may not be thinking of it from a sustainable perspective, means that how does this, they should actually take a step back, right? If they want to adopt ESG properly, they should be thinking about how does this support sustainability of their own business. So, for example, if today you are a services company, right, should you go and save the whales and then make donation and talk a lot about saving the whales? Is that your area? Are you in the best situation? Do you have the best resources? And would you say something wrong or promote the wrong institution or the wrong action to do that? It's not your area. And how does this then relate back to your own business? But let's say today you're providing financial services, right? Then one of the things that is a problem about the space that you're working on could be that, hey, there's a lot of small SMEs they may not be able to find loan, or they may not be able to secure certain kind of insurance or so on. So microfinancing, micro insurance, this become something that is more important for a business to support if they are a financial institution, or they may choose to do financial side education, or even if they wanted to do sponsorship, they should be more focused on that area. Of course, we are so far have been talking more about the social side, but for that's because ESG, right? E stands for environment, S social, and then G is governance. But from a financial institution, what is the issues that is coming up strongly? There's a lot of fraud. There's a lot of data that needs to be protected. There's a lot of products that's out there, and then people invest in them, and then 10 years later they find out that's not exactly the terms and conditions that their agent or whosoever promised them. How do they actually make sure that the marketing is transparent? How do they make sure that they protect consumers apart from just fulfilling basic of what the law expects? Do they go out and beyond to really do that? And how do they actually support more, like I said earlier, better marketing transparency in that space? Then when it comes to environment, like financial institutions, they do not directly deal with the environment because of the operation compared to a business like manufacturing. Manufacturing, they deal a lot with the environment. Why? Because whatever they produce has a lot of waste. They use a lot of electricity. They also often use a lot of water in the production, right? And a lot of materials. So manufacturing then will focus a lot more on environment. But if you're financial services, then how can you support environment? Maybe if you are the ones that provide loan, then you can approve the ones, you can give a more favorable rate or interest to businesses that are more environmental friendly or going towards green tech or something like that. So
maybe women own, right?
Diversity is a key social aspect as well, right? So in the end of the day, I think that the businesses have to understand what are their key material. We call this material issues, means key ESG topics that they need to focus on, and not just support anything that comes along their way. Right? Even if they say they want to do a sponsorship, okay, if I'm an engineering firm, I should be supporting the engineering students, right? And then they can be in a good position to also eventually join my company for internship. And then the word is out there for the employment, the graduate employment market about my company. So it actually relates back. And also, I'm to give them a better opportunity because I'm already in that space. So I think that's also one of the points I want to bring up, which is it needs to be strategic. Yeah. It needs to be strategic when a company chooses to pursue ESG.
I like that point because I think very few people think of that. They think that ESG means I will go out there and support any kind of charity or work that I feel is the flavor of the month, right? Like this time maybe I'll support, like you say, support the whales, or maybe next time I will go and do something else, maybe blogging, right? Cleaning up the beach, or doing things that it's good, but it may not fulfill also at the same time your own mission, right? As a business and a business owner. Yeah.
Because in the end of the day, we also have to be responsible to our stakeholders and how we best use our resources. And there are some cases, surprisingly, that it all went wrong because you may have supported a cause, but you didn't do it right, and then it backfires on you because you're not the expert for that. Yeah. So I think that's one of the number one myth is that it's about charity environment. That's moving quickly to try to answer your question in a more shorter way. Is the second one would be, I think that a lot of people think it's about compliance. Compliance means that, okay, this is not something we need to do until it becomes a compliance. Like now, e-invoicing is compliant, so let's wait for the deadline. When is the deadline? What's the requirement? And let's try to finish this before we are needing to comply the deadline, right? And also there's some people who think that we need a cert. We need a cert to prove that we are doing ESG, right? So they will come to me and ask me, Yvonne, how do I get certified? They are thinking something like ISO or something. I want to get certified in ESG. Well, they are not completely fully wrong in this approach or thinking that it's a cert. Of course, there are a lot of certs out there for individual who maybe study some area and then individually get certified, or some of these are professional certs. Some are international, some local. There are also some companies that may choose to go and get some themselves credit rated. So they go for some credit rating agency, or there are some institution out there that serve as a third party to see whether you have done certain good practices, and then you can earn a badge for the level of your implementation. So while those exist, it's actually not about achieving 1 or 2 certs and then you stop there and say, okay, great, I've achieved it. It's actually something more like a way of business. Sustainability is more like a way of business. ESG is the framework to help you organize yourself to get there, right? Because in the end of the day, we need the same comparison to know how well we're doing against our industry competitors. A lot of people don't know there are more than one ESG framework. Yeah, there are multiple ESG framework, and it all depends on whether you're talking about the framework of reporting, whether you're talking about the framework of implementing, running your business, like the RSPO is for the palm oil, how they govern and so on. So there are all kinds of frameworks out there. So it depends on your business, and you apply the one that's more relevant so that you can also compare like for like with your other industry players and see where you are. And also take some reference to see how you can improve in your own implementation. So it's a ongoing process. Once you choose to commit, then you will ongoingly be adopting it throughout your whole organization. Meaning that it is not like one department assign one person and then you are the person, our ESG champion or responsible person, and you do everything. Actually, it's not like that. Actually, it needs to be whole company. Let's say you're HR, then you'll be looking at what you said, diversity, one of it being a proportion of women, and then making sure that there's no discrimination, human rights taken care of, health and safety in the organization is looked after, then you have good training, so on and so forth to develop people. So that's the HR department side. But if I'm in production and I'm a manufacturing, then I have to make sure that all the electricity, how do we minimize, how do we use more energy efficient equipment, and how do we actually organize ourselves to use and save in terms of material usage and stuff like that. That's operations side. And then let's say if I happen to be in finance, then I just have to make sure that the governance for all these things are in place. So actually it requires a whole company to really adopt ESG properly. And it's not, today I've decided that, I would like to invest in solar panel. So now I'm an ESG compliant company just because you adopt solar panel. But at the same time, you are not giving good hostel or treatment, or not paying for OT for your foreign workers or stuff like that. So if these two coexist, then you are seen as maybe greenwashing. Means in one side, you're doing something good, but or something responsible, it seems, and then you are shouting about it, but actually your whole company is not really trying to be a wholly responsible company. You're just doing one angle, and that can be seen as greenwashing. So I think that a lot of people don't realize that actually it's a way of business and it's a strategy that you can implement, because sometimes by making it as part of a way of business means that you go all out, you would set targets, you would measure the improvement and so on. And at the same time, sometimes in the way they do a product, they can change the product elements to make it a more sustainable product, and it becomes a new market product with innovation. So it's definitely not just about compliance. It's related to strategy and operation. And I guess the last myth I would like to share is that a lot of people think that it's for large company with a lot of resources. But what they don't realize is that a lot of the ESG guidelines and so on are good practices anyways, that businesses should be implementing. And it's not about needing a very high investment, a lot of it. Simple things like changing your electricity lightings to LED lights and so on, things like that, or segregating your waste. Some of these are like small steps, like low-hanging fruits, quick wins, that doesn't require you to spend a lot. And I think that there's also a lot of a reason why small companies or smaller companies should do it, and it shouldn't be just about for large companies. Why? Because they can be more export ready. If a business is actually preparing or already exporting, EU this year has started to have to implement the EU order, and the certificate is about eventually needing them to pay for the emissions that is being used. What does the Malaysians want to export overseas to EU? Then they have to make sure that they have verifiable emission data. I know this all sounds a bit complex, but what I'm trying to say is that Malaysian businesses who want to export need to be ready as the market. Right?
Okay.
And then there is the carbon tax authority, the National Sustainability Reporting Framework. So what does it mean? Actually, if you're in certain industries like metal, steel, the carbon tax will be applicable. So if businesses today don't start measuring their carbon emissions, when it happened, then they realize that, oh, wow, it's so much and I didn't reduce it, I didn't manage it, and they will have to pay a lot. So it's going to increase cost of business. And the other thing would be when it comes to the National Reporting Framework for sustainability, businesses in 2027 is not too long from now, which means next year, okay, starting from the first group, right? And the first group is basically the largest publicly listed company, all the way up to the third group. The third group will involve even non-listed company. So it's not limited to public listed. So the third group is large non-listed company is involved as well. So it's by phases where they need to start to also measure what we call Scope 3 emission. Scope 3 emission means that they need to measure their supply chain emissions. So if today you are a product or services company that is supplying your product or service to a large company, right? By 2027 onwards, they will start to require to report. So if you start to prepare now, for those who is not ready, you will have a first mover advantage, right? To say that, hey, I'm already ready, I can share you my emission and I have been reducing my emission. So then you will become a favorable and preferred partner, right? If you're not serving the PLCs or the GLCs right now, then you have a chance now to enter into that market. So it opens up a new market for you. And of course, there's many other reasons why SMEs should do it, like access to finance. Do you know that almost 80% of global investors now actually using ESG as one of their key factors? Right, a lot of the fund managers as well are having some sort of mandate. Oh, you must at least have 20% of your portfolio in an ESG company and stuff like that. So if your business is ready, not only you can secure this kind of funding, but better incentive from government for grants and even lower interest rate to support your green technology. Highly encourage smaller companies to not see it as expenditure, but as an opportunity. Because a lot of SME think that I'm so small, I cannot make a difference, right? But they realize they're actually the backbone of our economy. They contribute in Malaysia about 40% of our GDP. And I really like one of the saying from Anita, the founder of Body Shop. She said that if you think you are too small, try going to bed with a mosquito.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that is true. Do you have any stories or examples from your work with SMEs?
So I think that if I were to summarize, maybe it's in 3 areas. They can think of it from a revenue area, a cost saving area, and also for the sustainability of their business. For revenue, I would say that they are able to get more quality customers because nowadays there's a lot of customers who expect sustainability in terms of, okay, maybe they don't expect the company to be sustainable, but a lot of customers are starting to look for solutions that are better. For example, better quality or are more healthier, right? And more reliable. And when they are looking for things like that, then it boils down to our system, right? And everything that we're offering. Do we actually have an angle to position ourselves? Can we say that we are a more responsible company? There's a particular brand that I go out of my way to purchase. It's actually a handbag brand. They offer a leather handbag, but the leather is a vegan leather. So basically made from corn, certain parts of the corn plant and recycled materials. I buy from them is because I feel strongly about it. And I feel like when they say that, hey, actually their leather is actually able to last for at least 10 years, I feel that actually it's not less functional or anything worse than a normal ladder. When it comes to normal ladder processing, I've seen, like, for example, one that was there, that the situation is like children are playing amongst the processing, the ladder processing plant, and then what they call it, to process ladders, a lot of chemicals, and they're inhaling all of this, and then it's also not well managed and things are rotting on the side. I'm also looking for a sustainable brand, and I'm willing to pay the price premium for that. Of course, you can say that, hey, a lot of people who are not going towards that direction, and then they're going with, am I the cheaper product? But if you choose to position yourself by just pricing, in the end, you'll get into a price war. You need to find a way to differentiate your product. And I think there's a real opportunity for them to look into these key social and environmental issues that people do start to care about. And this company also donates, I think, a certain percentage of their profit for every bag that is being sold. At the same time, they also plant a tree for every bag that's being sold. So there is this irreplaceable emotional value when you associate yourself and how many bags do I need? One. So I don't mind to invest more in paying for this brand, and I go out my way to get it because it's not easy to get. And so I would say that from a revenue standpoint, this is one example. And maybe I also can share another company. This is a Malaysian company. It's called Nutrition Technologies. What they do is that they turn waste management into money. I'm not so sure if you heard of the black soldier fly larva. So they collect all this food waste and then they feed it to this larva, and eventually this waste that's being eaten up becomes animal feed. So the larva can become an animal feed and also fertilizer. And actually they achieve zero waste in the sense that whatever that the larva doesn't eat, it still can go into the fertilizer as a compost, right? So they recycle, the previous old figure was 80,000 tons per year, but I believe now it's probably more. And they are able to secure and raise funds. I think at one point, I remember one of the rounds that they raised was USD 28 million. Worth of funds. And they've recently, I think it was last year, they have rebranded themselves so that they can go into more AI biotech direction to offer different kinds of solutions. So I think that there's so many opportunities to increase our revenue, offering a new product, new offering, open up into new market, and at the same time secure financing. Then when it comes to cost savings, of course we know that a lot of times we may seem like we're saving the environment, doing something that's energy efficient, but energy efficiency is one of the key cost reduction methods, right? I think the Alliance Bank offered statistics. The survey came out in January 2025 last year, where 24% of the ESG adopting SMEs see a cost saving of more than 51%, driven by energy and waste management, right? So by reducing the energy usage, being more efficient, using certain materials that are recyclable, and managing waste, all of this is actually good for business. And not to forget, from a social standpoint, if you're treating your staff, looking into human rights issue, providing training and so on, you have lower staff turnover. And every time you employ a new employee, you actually have to pay more for that. And then there's also an opportunity cost. They have to learn and so on. And so during this time when they're learning and you're trying to secure them to become better employees, they are taking up a lot of our productivity time. So that's also cost for us, right? So I would think that from revenue and cost saving, these are really important. In fact, the same survey from Allianz showed that 38% of the SMEs that they surveyed actually found their revenue increased by more than 51%. So this is really talking just about the SME market. I think that this is a good indication that SME should really take advantage, seeing it as an opportunity to position themselves differently, and in the long term achieve the number 3 thing that I was saying, which is sustainability. Because when you're supported by your stakeholders, you lower your risk. I would like to share a bit about risk. Risk is the part whereby you try to have better governance, then you will lower your risk, right? At the same time, there's this angle of climate management, which is climate adaptation. Means that you predict that let's say the environment will change, let's say there will be more flooding. So what are you going to do to prepare for it? Do you feel that you can have better drainage? You build something to prevent when rain, it becomes more serious, flooding become more serious, and so on. So what can you do to prevent it? And things like OSHA and so on actually reduce the risk for your business. And when you also continue to see what the market is looking for, because you have to try to create new value that's different, right? So you may look in all those social angles, and you'll find that your company become more and more relevant, and you're able to adapt to the changing environment. So with all this, you would have overall better sustainability. So I would say that the company should definitely look at it as a strategic positioning, strategic advantage from at least these three angles. And I'm not so sure if a lot of businesses know that the government actually also have a national green procurement policy, where they require 50% to about 100% of some of the product and services to have to be green product or My Hijau certified product, which means that if today you want to be part of their panel list, then you need to go and get this certification. And if today you are not part of the list and you have this certification, you have a higher chance to enter their list if some of their existing suppliers are not as part of that list right now, having this green angle. So there's just so many opportunities. A lot of people don't know, but actually China have one of the most advanced waste to energy plant. They have this incineration plant where they burn the rubbish and so on, and then it becomes energy, and then they can power a lot of households. And in fact, I think they overdid it in such a way where by now they have not enough rubbish to burn. And actually the technology is quite advanced, they meet EU standards, and now their business become a export model. In 2026, I read a study. It says that they already have 100 projects across the Middle East, Southeast Asia, Africa, where they export their technology and building in those countries, where you don't have to segregate your rubbish and you just burn everything. Because they created their own technology, they were not able to do it the same way as a lot of European countries, because European countries, you segregate your rubbish and then you burn. But for them, they had to create a more advanced technology because they have not able to get everybody to get rubbish, but they have a problem of a lot of rubbish. So by solving this rubbish issue, this waste management issue, they came up with a new model. So I think there's just so much opportunity if we focus on what is the problem that we're facing from an environmental and social perspective, and how can we add value to this system in whatever field that we are in.
I think that part where you mentioned just now is actually very interesting, because they literally created a new business from doing what no one was doing it, right? No one was actually incinerating their rubbish. So now they became like a forerunner of the technology and the business.
Yeah, not in the same way that they were doing previously. So they were one of the pioneers of doing it in that way, where you didn't have to segregate your rubbish before it was, because at first it was a problem for them. They took technology from elsewhere and they didn't segregate the rubbish. In fact, they are needing to use more resources, putting in more fuel or stuff like that to get the rubbish to burn because it was too wet. Eventually, they had to create their own solution for it. If not, they are trying to be sustainable by solving rubbish problem, but they are not solving because they're using more resources to solve this problem.
Now I want to talk a little bit about how do people get started, or how do business owners get started. I understand a little bit more about how it could be filled with opportunities rather than challenges. It could be something that could create even a new business, like the example that you gave, or it could be something that will put me in a huge strategic advantage if I get ahead of this game earlier than most people. So how do they get into that? Okay, how do I do it? And what should I be thinking of if I'm going to really think of this seriously for the long term?
I think it's a great question. How do we get started? I would divide that into a couple of steps. Maybe if I have to summarize, about 4 steps. I think the first one is to know where you are right now. What are you doing? You can take a simple inventory about a kind of initiatives that you're doing along ESG and where's the gap. So I think one of the, if you do not know where to start, actually our country is proud with being the first country to have a simplified ESG disclosure guide for SMEs. It's actually launched by the Capital Markets and the Securities Commission. So they can go and look for this guide. It's publicly available. And from there, benchmark themselves, know what they're doing. And then from the guide as well, they can see how they can actually measure success. Right? For example, how do I know if I'm doing well in employee training? It's usually measured in training hours. How do I know if I'm doing well in waste management? Actually, it's measured in the amount of weight of rubbish that you actually recycle and put it back, or how do you actually divert it away from the landfill, right? So your first step is to review where you are using some simplified guideline if you're not so sure how to do it. Then the second one would be you need to start looking into your business. Actually, what is the ethos of your business, and then what is the important topics of your business. So along E, S, and G, there are a lot of different topics, and there's a lot of resources out there. If they're not sure, they can chat with their new best friend, ChatGPT or other AI chats, and to find out what could be the key topics for their industry. There's so many frameworks out there. I don't want to bore everyone, but it's not hard to find out. And they can look into what are both the risks and opportunities for them. In these topics means that I'm doing this. I choose this topic as a priority because I think it's important not just for me, but for my key stakeholders. And then first, they also use as key stakeholders. Usually, key stakeholders are employees, your customers. What do they care about? And if you are in a business where it's highly regulated, then the government policies are one of also the key stakeholders. What do they care about? So you evaluate what's opportunity there and also the risk. And then I think the third step would be then once you know which is your priority, then you can start planning in a way that you set targets. Just like how you implement anything important in your company, right? A new initiative, you would set targets, you would track, you put someone in charge, you would set a timeline for it. And then you slowly build the knowledge, the capacity and the capability for your team to adopt more and more. So you don't have to immediately, these are the 20 things that this guideline say, and then we will go do all the 20 things by next year so that we can announce to everyone we actually comply. I think that's not the way to go. I think in the end of the day is what's our business objective? What are some of the low-hanging fruit we can do? And then how do we slowly set aside a certain amount of budget and time for us to implement and also track this? Then eventually, the last step I would say is to, of course, execute it and communicate. A lot of businesses are doing some of this initiative, but they are not really communicating it very well. When they're not communicating, they are actually limiting in terms of the ability to leverage on this, whether it is for the purpose of getting better buy-in from their stakeholders. So that's one side. That's some people say, no, I want to be quiet about the good things that I do. I don't have to tell the whole world. Yes, but have you thought about your ability to advocate, right? When you're sharing the good things that you're doing, you can also invite the community, whether it's the neighborhood group of people who are near where you operate, or whether it's your customers or your employees, to actually be part of it, inspire them so that the change and the impact that you can create is bigger. So how do we communicate that and position ourselves differently? Because when we get more support and our business grow bigger, we're also able to impact more people, right? And make a bigger change. So I would definitely advocate for businesses to don't be shy and communicate that. And sometimes they can also get external recognition from credible bodies, not just for the purpose of I want to win an award, but it's also to push themselves, to benchmark themselves with other companies, right? To become better, know where's their gap in this whole process.
Yeah. I would really love to link to that guide that you mentioned. Maybe later after this, you can send me the link and I'll put it together with the article that comes out so that these people can check themselves, right? First, they have to have a baseline. They need to know where they are. So I think that will be good. The second one is very interesting because you say the ethos, right? The key topics that matter in the industry as well as matter to your stakeholders. I think sometimes when people think of stakeholders, they probably think of customers. They never think of their employees. They think of, okay, the customers are the ones who pay us money. We have to think about what they need. But they never think in return, okay, what about the people who work for me? What about the people who are in my company? So I think that's a really good point. And the third one, of course, you say planning, right? Then you can plan, you can decide what the targets, what you want to, or what you hope to achieve. And finally is the, communication, right? To communicate it out to people, because like you say, I think a lot of people just believe that if they do good work, somehow people will know about the good work. But these days, it's not just about talking about your work, but really bringing in the communities that are impacted by the work that you do. So yeah, it's great. It's a great way for people to think, okay, now, if you're confused, you just follow these 4 steps.
It's good to get started with these 4 steps, and then from there they can grow in a more robust way. But I think these are probably the basic 4 steps, and the communication should also be internal. Actually, some of this is also not just to promote and advocate, but it's also to give assurance. I think it's giving assurance to your stakeholders that you're a responsible company.
Yvonne, in terms of your own company, are there any things that you are doing particularly that you like to share with the listeners?
My company is very much simpler because of the way we operate. I would say that, of course, paperless and all these things is already a given. We use very little paper. We also are more transparent in our pricing, right, in how that we charge our clients. And we also offer some discounts actually to especially smaller SMEs who want to start their ESG journey. And also work from home is a big thing for us so that we reduce the amount of carbon footprint that we have. Overall, for a service company at our scale, I think these are some of the key things that we do. And of course, the rest of the things will be things like anti-bribery, diversity. Of course, we also invest a lot in training because things keep moving, so we have to be up to date. Yeah.
So Yvonne, if people want to learn more about you or work with you, where can they get in touch?
I think the best way to learn about us is through our website. Our website is stratxadvisory.com. That's where they can learn about what we offer, what we do, how can we help. And if they want to get in touch with me personally, I think the best way is through LinkedIn.
And I will have all the links in the show notes that comes with this episode. So if you're listening to this on Spotify and all that, just check the show notes and you'll get all the links. Or you can go to womenpreneurasia.com where the full article about Yvonne is up. And you can read all about her. Because this is the thing I want to tell people sometimes. The episode is the episode. But because I have a lot more information about you, that will be in the article. So you want to know about her favorite books, what she likes to do in her pastime, what are some of the things that she's really interested in, or who she's inspired by, please check the article on our website so you can get everything about her. That's a more comprehensive picture about you, right? Rather than just the business side of things.
Yeah, thank you. If I may allow to share something personal. Starting last year, I started to have this aspiration to do gardening so that I can have farm to table to reduce my carbon footprint when it comes to my groceries.
Oh, that's a good one. Okay, so one more question before we end this, right, is that does being in this industry of yours also allow you to be more self-aware of what we do in our daily life?
Exactly. That's such a great one. Yes, I actually do. As we go along, then I will start to pay attention. Whether coffee has more carbon footprint, and then there's, let's say, alcoholic drinks, wine have more carbon footprint than beer. I pay attention to that, and what kind of meat actually have higher carbon footprint, and then what do we do? How do we segregate our rubbish? In fact, for me personally, I actually have 2 rubbish bins outside my house because the council given one is a huge one, and then I have a same size but different color in green, which is for all my recycled. Yeah, because the council does come once a week, and then I just fill it out. And of course, we sometimes also go to all those recycling centers for other things like clothing and things like that. So I think that is very important to practice and feel inspired by what we believe in and continue to do that. It does change my life, and I feel so much more inspired by how I choose to live my life. Yeah, and I think that, definitely, I think pursuing sustainability is not just a concept to fulfill some compliance somewhere, but it's also something that we do because we believe in this concept and that is better for everyone. Right? Because I do believe in this thing about the shared humanity, and for businesses, I truly believe that this is now really a golden opportunity, because when you wait for it to be everybody is doing it and then you come in, there's no strategic advantage. That premium is less and less, that margin is less and less, right? But if you start now, you're able to really have a compounding effect on being one of the pioneer, one of the first mover to do this, one of the first to enter into a list of panels of companies who actually believe in this. It's just something like when you buy stock, right? Everybody's talking about this stock, you buy, it's too late.
Yeah,
you should be doing it as a strategic move now. And this golden opportunity is just in the next 2 years or so. Why? Because later on compliance will come in, and a lot of people require scope 3, which is the suppliers, and a lot of them are SMEs, emission data. So by then, a lot of people will be like, you're doing it, so am I, and everyone, right? So if you want to really stand out, start this process, which will take time. It's good to start now, really.
Yeah. So thank you, Yvonne. Even I learned something from this, because to me, I think ESG is a very broad term, and a lot of people get very confused when it's a broad term because people don't unpack each single component in that term. So I'm glad you came, and I like the fact that we link it to the business community and the small business community as well, because I think that is where they need the most help. I guess if you're an MNC or you're a big, large corporation, you have all the resources, all the infrastructure to help you get it done. But when you're smaller and you have a lack of everything, lack of resources, you just need to be able to look at it as a strategic advantage so that you are able to be ahead of the pack, so to speak, before everyone comes in. So This is great advice. So thank you so much, Yvonne.
Yeah, thank you so much for allowing me to share.
One key takeaway from this conversation is that ESG, when aligned with your business goals, becomes a sustainable and strategic growth engine rather than a cost center. The idea is to start small, pick low-hanging fruits, and communicate what you're doing, not just to customers, but to employees, suppliers, and the neighborhood around you. Remember, it's not enough to be involved in ESG, but it's smart to be strategic about ESG. The opportunity is time sensitive. Early movers can shape the field and create lasting advantage before broader compliance catches up. So my question to you is this: what is the first step that you will take this week to begin your ESG journey? Share this with a friend and subscribe to Womenpreneur Asia for more practical insights about business. If you like more behind-the-scenes updates and news from our podcast guests, or you don't want to miss out on any episodes that we release, do sign up for our list on our website at womenpreneurasia.com. This is Krista Gun, and I will see you next Friday for more conversations with women entrepreneurs across Asia.